I'm back. It's already 2 degrees warmer than the peak warmth of yesterday. Pretty sure. I think it was only 57 yesterday. Anyway, I don't know why I do it. It kind of traumatizes me. I actually just got through watching the Aggie Longhorn highlights, and one thing I actually want to just see what Kyle Field looks like from the inside now, because when I was there, it was still originally the old original stadium with AstroTurf in it. It was one of the most horrible places to play football on this planet. One of the hottest. It was actually hotter than Tiger Stadium, which still had natural turf. AstroTurf is just. But I got a comment from watching is that the Aggie linemen, both offensive and defensive, looked like pudding. They really did. It just looked like pudding. They just push them around. It's just not very. Without linemen, it doesn't matter what your backfield's like. It don't matter what your offensive backs or your defensive backs are. Actually, the Aggie defensive backfield looked like he was doing a pretty good job, but the offensive defensive lines just sucked. Yeah. I got a lot of shit to say about that, but don't want to go. One thing, A&M's cheap as shit. Now, see, they spent all that money on that stadium and stuff, and they had all the fireworks, and because it's an historic rivalry that's way beyond the Army-Navy game, the Notre Dame games. It's one of the oldest and biggest. I told you, it was the first play-by-play broadcast of a football game on this planet. There's a lot of history invested in this rivalry. A&M's always been at a disadvantage because we're generally a bunch of farm boys, and farm boys have got to work hard in August and in September and sometime going into October because we're farm boys. When I went to A&M, the student population, the enrollment was only 17,500, and 1,000 of them were incoming freshman girls. Remember, until about 1964, A&M was almost a pure, strictly straight up, all male, a lot of them military corps, pretty much an all male school. Even in 1972, if you weren't on the football team or had real long, pretty hair and a lot of pot, you couldn't get laid on the Aggie campus. There just wasn't. You had to go hunting the local women who were not impressed by anybody other than unless you were on the football team. Weren't impressed by Aggies. They look terrible. I do want to make one mention I noticed years ago is thank God they finally did away with them fucking stupid ass knee pads and shit that just slow you down. You're talking to somebody who does 40 yards in 4.8 seconds. I can actually do the first 20 yards faster than Carl Roach's. That's a fact, Carl. Carl's better in the longer distance, but my speed within the first 20 yards was explosive, and that's pushing 300 pounds, 270 mine, and 30 pounds of equipment. I also like the way that they reduced the goddamn girdle that carried the tailbone pad and the hip pads. So if they've got that stuff down more compact now and less binding, because your speed and agility is dependent on that shit. Them stupid fucking knee pads, I never know them to stop a kneecap fracture ever. They're always getting pushed up. They always were coming out because they actually had to go on a little sleeve that was separate to sewed onto, but had an opening. It was a sleeve inside the pants. They were constantly coming out, popping out, and the only way to contain them was to tape them on, which then restricts and constrains blood flow in your legs. Good morning. So the biggest improvements I've seen in football is in freeing up the legs and stuff like that from unnecessary protection. Those knee pads were absolutely freaking useless. It was more obvious on AstroTurf because AstroTurf is like sandpaper. You know, you can just see more damage with those old. Now you can see that they're not even using knee pads. Some of them I saw looked like they had a little pad just above the kneecap. And the hip girdle thing is much more compact now. You can't even really barely see the tailbone or hip protectors or shit. So that alone has really altered. To tell you the truth, it looked like they was back to playing on AstroTurf. That didn't look like natural turf to me. At A&M, I was told it was natural turf. I don't know how it get much sunlight. They've built it up so high. They've really putting on a show there. But I want to talk about how fucking cheap A&M was. When I went to A&M, I'm pretty sure UT was actually using the real Division I and Pro type mouth guards. When I went there, they were still using grade 12 mouth guards. I have, as I've told you before, natural 28 teeth, not the modern 32. Grade 12 mouth guards don't even protect my last 4 molars. And if you got 32 teeth, it doesn't protect your last 8 molars. Yeah, and which led, I had some molar damage from, you know, in the pros, everybody wears a custom molded with a little harder shell that actually fits your mouth and actually protects all your teeth. And I hated that whole, and I had that bad habit because of my way I breathed and the way apparently I grunted. I don't remember doing it, but it make all these noises. That's why they used to have them tied on, and now they don't seem to be doing it. Your mouth guard was tied onto your helmet, your face guard, because we had often, you know, those of us really exerting and blowing and huffing and puffing, we'd spit them out. Let's talk about the cheapness more. My sugar daddy, I'm sure he's dead by now, Earl Vondergoltz, owned a little steel mill down in Stafford, Texas. And he was kind of tight with the money. He was Jewish. He lived in Bel Air. He's a Dutch Jew, Vondergoltz. Actually, his daughter started A&M the same year I did. And he was tight with money. I knew the first thing I worked at his steel mill. It was all set up. Actually, I had an apartment that was technically paid for by the university. Yeah. So was the phone, and I ran up a hell of a phone bill calling my girlfriends in California every night. That turned out to be a problem for a particular coach who had to sign off on my phone bill. See the cheapness to it? Instead of just giving me the money, which Stanford was going to do, just cash money right up front. You deal with it, to keep themselves separate, you know. They were still letting alums, because any agent of the university, it's illegal for them to. And occasionally he would reward me. He'd be there after a game like my freshman. And, you know, if I've obviously won the game, he'd shake my hand. And it'd be like a one with $100 bill in his hand. There'd be other people that hand me. But, you know, it costs a lot of money to go to college. There's no time for me to really work during the summer and earn money and shit. Playing football is a year-round job. And he was just so tight. And I knew my freshman year, I kind of understood the general rules. I had to, and he paid for it. But then again, I'm working in his factory. It's not like I didn't earn it to begin with. He paid for a used Chevy Bel Air. Actually, that's exactly what the last vehicle I was driving in high school, was a Chevy Bel Air. And then this one was only about a year older than that one or whatever. I got it used for like $900. He did. Actually, when I came back from, and he didn't even give me that much. When I came back after my father's death, I spent the summer in California with my asshole brother Rolf. It's the only time we ever lived together. He knew I was kind of depressed. He had asked, you know, well, no, he did. Once again, same duplex, because he owned that duplex and my brother Charlie owned the duplex across from it in Redwood City, California. I forget the address now. But when I got back, when I just goofed off all summer because I was depressed. I was there with my father to his last bloody breath. Diagnostic Center Hospital, Houston, Texas. That's right in the MD Anderson kind of complex. It's all cancer there. He gave me a little check, you know, relatively small, really, like I was working part-time at the factory, you know, during the summer. Really it's not even really 2 months. He handed me some little check and stuff like that. And then once I got on campus and stuff, he started showing up for the games. I told him, I said, I want a brand new car. No good athlete plays without getting paid. And he just kind of shrugged it off. Right then, things started going south. You want me to get out there and be the best lineman, and I was. The best, fastest, strongest, ass-kickingest lineman. I beat the University of Texas, motherfucker. You can ask anybody. If he's still alive, Professor Victor Hugo Treat, who watched the game, said when I called him up, accidentally found him in the phone book, he said, you beat UT almost single-handedly. And I said, you must have been at the game. Yeah. I won all the last of the freshman games. And then they instead of moving me up to varsity once the freshman games were over, they decided to let me rest because they were, then, they still had, oh gosh, they always had, A&M always gets stupid coaches. Jackie Sherrill, fuck you. Emory Ballard, fuck you. Always get stupid coaches. Apparently one exception was maybe Mad Dog Robertson, the defensive coach, who know to just stop trying to coach me. I'm like Mac Brown said about Vince Young, that by his sophomore year, he just stopped coaching him. He just, let him run the game. Because Vince Young is like me. He's a loose cannon. I'll make up my mind whether I'm going to follow your general orders or not. If I see a chance as a defensive lineman to bust a play and win the fucking game, bust any play, and get an advantage on my opponent, I'm going to do it. And my other dumbass teammates just didn't have that quality in their personality. They were little order following. That's one of the biggest problems with A&M, is they want you to be that militaristic, follow the orders, walk into the line of fire. That's one of the biggest problems with Aggie coaching, is y'all keep recruiting guys. The guys like me that ain't going to follow orders and know that I'm worth getting paid appropriately. There was a lot of money, but a lot of that money flowed out was for me. I had to spend on recruiting. I became their #1 recruiter right after my freshman season. As soon as my freshman season was over, I became A&M's top recruiter because I could get them anywhere. And I had the name associated, and I just had the kind of the social skills. Usually linemen only recruit linemen, quarterbacks only recruit quarterbacks, all this stuff. A&M let me recruit everybody that they were going after, all the top people that they were going after. And it wasn't a good recruiting season. It wasn't a really we didn't sign anybody that was really a... That's because the head coach was fucking up. He had made a promise to Stallings, guys. Don't get me started on Gene Stallings. Why am I doing this? It's just going to traumatize me. I'll have to take a Xanax. As soon as this finishes, it's Xanax time. My PTSD covers a whole range of things, beginning with, my first, real, crippling injuries, like my spinal fracture at age 14. L5, pars interarticularis, broke off. The cheapness was just, but yet they were building, my freshman year, they were just finishing off the Kane dormitory, which had like an in-house theater it was strictly for football and all this stuff. They were just finishing it about the time I quit A&M. I was already in my sophomore year. I'm going to tell you exactly what pissed me off was that Emory Bellard had promised Stallings Group to play them as much as to try to retain as many of them, to play them as much as they possibly could. And even though Emory Bellard knew that I was 1,000 times better than tiny, pretty boy Ted Lamb, he let Ted Lamb start beginning my sophomore year when he should have just benched that fucking senior loser. And they just ran over us. The night after the Boston College game, when Emory Bellard wouldn't put me in instead of Ted Lamb, because I was the only one that could plug from actually less than 0 to going to the right side all the way out to 7. I was the only man on that team that could plug up that hole and actually drive them back. That's the statistical fact. You can't gain yardage against the Krugers. I still hold the record. Negative yardage in that zone. Boston College ran it up 49-7 against us because Emory Bellard didn't take a senior named Ted Lamb. Where did you go, Ted? Nowhere, because you were a piece of shit crap lineman, just like the lineman I just watched in the Aggie lineman that I just watched just act like fucking pudding, both offensive and defensive. I have never lost a game where coach controlled game that because of keeping me out of the game, because I'm a sophomore, he's letting him try to finish his senior year. You went nowhere, Ted. You just completely disappeared off the face of the map. Why? Because you were a crap lineman. You were smaller than me, slower than me, didn't have 1/2 my strength or lateral agility. Boston College beat us 49-7. And I just went like, no, I can see this is fucking going nowhere. The Niners wanted me to sign with them right then. And I had to make a decision. Should I leave A&M where I'm really only receiving a total compensation, just a little bit less than what I'd get in the pros? And then I'd have to deal with my 2 asshole brothers at the 49ers. And I just said, fuck you. Fuck you all. I'm not going to play for a coach that doesn't know when to take out a fucking player that ain't worth a shit and put in the younger player, me. I was 19 years old, and I was fucking 10 times the lineman that Ted Lamb ever was. He was one of them order following. He was weak. He was slow. My God, the guy couldn't even, I don't think he ever broke like 5.2 seconds in the 40. I was 0.4 of a second faster than him in 40 yards and had at least always 20 pounds more muscle, almost 2 inches taller than him, more reach. and left-handed in a right. Guess Emory Bellard proved right then to me that he was a suck-ass coach. And when I left, man, everybody was, because A&M had never won a championship, Southwest Conference championship, without a Kruger brother on the team for about a 50-year period. So they took it as a bad omen when I left. And it was. It took him another 3 full years to get in a 3-way tie for the Southwest Conference championship. But that's, just to tell you, that's one of the reasons I left the Aggies, was a coach, bad coach, cheap-ass, alums, not paying me enough. I must be compensated with cash, marijuana, and fellatio, and a decent vehicle to receive that fellatio from the girls from. Don't need the hotel room thing. For a young boy, fellatio don't take long. You know what I'm saying? Simple as that. Play me, pay me, or I'm gone. To stand there and watch Boston College just murder us 49-7. Look up that game, 1973. That was the worst humiliation of my life, just because I was on the team. We didn't lose because of me. We lose because the coach didn't put me in. They were just running over Ted Lamb like he was fucking pudding, just like last night with the the UT lineman with the Aggie lineman. That's really all I want to say is, Aggies, you're a bunch of cheap-ass bastards at both your... Now you might be kind of coming up to speed, but you're still picking out suck-ass coaches. And you still keep trying to get these players that ain't loose cannons, that ain't free thinkers like me, that just don't have that natural gift. You keep getting coaches that only will approve of and work with young men that will follow their every dictate. It doesn't work when you got bad coaches. When you recruit people that are not like me, you've got to be a loose cannon like Vince Young or me or other great players. If you follow coach's orders, you'll always lose. I'm going to finish with this. I may repeat it twice. Players win games, coaches lose them. That's the problem at A&M. I'm going to repeat that as the final. This will be the title. Players win the games, coaches only lose them. Coaches don't win. Players win the game, coaches only lose them. That's it from a pro. I was paid to play football from by the time I was 14 years old. I was compensated. Fuck your bullshit amateur status crap. Players win games, coaches only lose them.